Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Now this time, I'm going to review another one of my favorite Pixar movies for its 15th anniversary this year. That's right, Up. Now, the movie starts off when a young Carl Fredricksen was at a movie theater watching a documentary about his favorite adventurer, Charles Muntz. They say he discovered a rare kind of creature. It's called the Monster of Paradise Falls. But scientists and experts couldn't find the exact skeleton, so they claimed him a fraud. So he decided to look for the bird and bring it back to prove them wrong. Then after the film, he was walking home and explored an old abandoned house. And then inside the house was a girl named Ellie. Ellie and Carl started talking about Charles Muntz, and they want to be just like him, an adventurer. Then a few years later, they actually got married, fixed up the house, and lived in it. They did everything together. Then they got older, and then, realizing they haven't gotten to Paradise Falls yet, Carl decided to buy some tickets that, from all the saved money they had, about to present them from the picnic they're about to have. But then all of a sudden, Ellie started to fall ill. She didn't survive. That means Carl was all alone. It was hard for him to get over the passing of Ellie. But Carl had to learn to live with it. But then a few years later, the neighborhood he lived in wasn't exactly what it used to be. There was now a construction site around the house. And the boss of the construction site really irritated him. And then, at the door, there was a boy who was a scout named Russell. He's trying to earn his senior's assistant badge. Then he decided to play a trick on Russell, like there's a creature called a snipe. So Russell decided to look for the snipe, but Carl was just trying to trick him so he can get rid of him. But then all of a sudden, a big machine accidentally backed into the mailbox. A construction worker tried to fix it, but Carl whacked him in the head with his cane. Everybody around him saw what happened, so he was taken to court, and he was sentenced to be taken to Shady Oaks retirement home. But he wasn't going to let that happen. So the next day, when two workers from Shady Oaks retirement home named George and AJ went to pick him up, he asked, "Can you do me a favor and take this? I'll be out in the van just a minute." So just they're about to put his suitcase in the van, there are all these balloons coming out of his chimney, and the balloons lifted the house, on his way to Paradise Falls. And just when he was about to relax, he heard another knock at the door. So he answered it. And Russell was still there on the porch. So he invited Russell in, and they were on their way to Paradise Falls. But then all of a sudden, there was a big storm heading their way. Carl tried to steer it away, but however, they got sucked into the storm. There was lots of thunder and lightning and everywhere, tossing the house around. But then after he tied his stuff down, he went and took a nap, and Russell steered the house with the help of his GPS. And once they headed down, they were there in South America, right close to Paradise Falls. So they decided to walk over to the falls with no distractions. But then, Russell needed to use the bathroom, so he decided to use it the wilderness way. He dug a hole, did his business, and filled it up. And then Russell noticed giant tracks. So he followed the tracks, wondering what they could be. Then all of a sudden, a beak started to peck at Russell. That's because Russell had some chocolate. So he decided to lure the creature out. And there was a giant bird full of colorful feathers. And that bird was the snipe. Russell assumed it was a boy, so he decided to name the bird Kevin. But Carl didn't want the bird to tag along. However, Kevin followed anyway with the lure of Russell's chocolate. He tried to shoo Kevin away. Then they heard a voice that's saying, "Hey, are you okay over there?" There was nobody there. And then out of the shadows stood a dog with an electric collar that could speak. And that dog was named Doug. But however, Kevin knew Doug feel like it was a threat. So Doug tagged along also. And then, back in the jungle, there were 3 other dogs smelling the bird's scent. They also found the smell of chocolate, prunes, and denture cream. And those dogs were Beta, Gamma, and Alpha. Alpha was the leader of the dog pack. And let me tell you, Alpha was speaking in a high-pitched voice, sounding like a chipmunk from Alvin and the Chipmunks. So they decide to call Doug up and ask him where the bird is. And Doug told him that he had the bird. So they tracked Doug and followed where he was. Then later that night, they decided to stop for camp. And then Russell told Carl about his life with his dad in the city. Then the next day, they woke up. Kevin was on the roof. And then we see Kevin wailing in the distance because there were other whales in the distance also. Doug said that the bird is calling to her babies, and that gives a really shocking twist. Kevin was really a girl. And despite that, Kevin really being a girl, they still called her Kevin. Then once Kevin left for her babies, or so they thought, Alpha and the other dogs found them and took them right to a creepy mountain. But in the shadows of the cave, there was Carl's old childhood hero, Charles Muntz. Muntz invited them in and showed them all the skeleton statues that he had, which Carl remembered seeing when he was a boy. But then Muntz showed the skeleton of the monster of Paradise Falls, which was really a skeleton of Kevin. But then Muntz revealed his true nature by saying, "These people who pass by, they all tell pretty good stories. A surveyor making a map, a botanist cataloging plants, and lots of other stuff." It revealed that due to his obsession with the bird, which he's been tracking for a long time, that led him to kill innocent explorers and travelers who were passing, who he thinks they were trying to look for the bird themselves. Then all of a sudden, there was a whale outside. It was Kevin's whale. Muntz saw that it was there, and Carl and Russell escaped from the dogs and Muntz. That means they had to get Kevin back home. And once they did finally get her home that night, as soon as she was about to enter, a huge spotlight appeared. It was Muntz's airship. It caught Kevin in the net, and she was trapped. Carl tried to free her with a knife, but Muntz came out of the airship and said, "Get away from my bird." The dogs were pulling his house. Muntz had his lantern and threw it under the house, literally setting it on fire. Making Carl decide who she should save, Kevin or his house. So he chose his house while the dogs took Kevin. And despite his house nearly destroyed, he yells at Doug and Russell. And Doug left in sadness. Then he told to Russell, "Now whether you assist me or not, I'm taking my house to Paradise Falls if it kills me." And so he did. He finally got his house at Paradise Falls. set everything up in his house and relaxed. Then he looked up Ellie's book, which said My Adventure Book. It had lots of memories from Ellie's childhood. And then there was a page that said stuff that I'm gonna do. Which Carl did not want to look at. But once a page flipped, he finally looked at it, and it was all the times that they had together, their married life, and doing everything together. And at the last page, she wrote, "Thanks for the adventure. Now go have another one." The reason why I said that because she was his adventure. And the message to that scene is you have to move on and let things go, which is true. So Carl went to look for Russell. Happened to find him. He grabbed a bunch of the balloons and a leaf blower. He was going to try and rescue Kevin. That means he had to go along too. So he got his house back in the air. And then he heard another knock at the door. It was Doug. Doug said he was hiding under his porch because he loved him and asked him if he can stay. And he said, "Well, you're my dog, aren't you? And I'm your master." Which made Doug very happy. Once Russell arrived back to the airship, he tried to fight off the dogs, but he was no match for them. They got a chair and some rope and tied him up. And then Carl and Doug just arrived at the scene, just catching Russell nearly from falling. Russell wanted to help, but Carl wanted him safe, so he let him stay in the house. They created a distraction for the dogs, like throwing a tennis ball. And they got Kevin out of the cage, but Muntz didn't want it to let that happen. So they fight on the ship with a sword versus a cane. Then Muntz really went on edge. And he said, "I'm taking that bird back with me, alive or dead." But then they escaped the ship, saw the house flying towards the ship, and were just about to leave when Muntz got a gun, tried to shoot them. But, however, that led him fall to his death when he tried to catch Kevin, who escaped from the house. So that means Charles Muntz was dead. And then the house floated off. And Russell said, "Sorry about your house, Mr. Fredricksen." And Carl said, "You know, it's just a house." That means he moved on. Then they returned Kevin and got her back to her babies. Then they headed back to town where Russell was out his scouts earning their badges, and a special badge which was Ellie's pin. And then they went to the ice cream shop to get ice cream, still with the airship at their side. And that's how the movie ends. Now, I gotta say, Up was a pretty emotional film. Like, if you have some things like if you're obsessed with, and it's hard for them to let go of, you had to move on and let things go. And that's how life works. Even though you're obsessed with things and hard to let go of. So, that's all, guys. That's all the movie review I have. And if you want to watch Up, it's on DVD and on Disney Plus. So I'll see you next time, guys. And I'll see you guys on the next movie review.